Hi, Karen with you today. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's share is for Scrap Effects Australia, and I've got a journal page for you today. I'm using some new products and some of my trusty, always used products pretty much on every layout. So some of the new products this month that I've used and some that you'll see there in shot, but a couple of them I don't actually end up using, but you will see them in probably my next layout. This layout did evolve as I was creating it. I didn't actually have an exact thing in my mind of what I wanted, so it was really about me just having a really big play. So I started off with the old script collage paper there, which is brand new this month, and I just stuck that down to some basic boring old white cardstock with some gel medium. I also have pulled out a ladder stamp there, which I don't actually end up using, but I did want to point out that that is a new product for this month. And there's the Roses Posy up the top on the right hand side as well. I don't end up using that, but you will see it a few times. It's such a cute little silhouette. I will definitely be using that. It just didn't end up working for where my layout went for this particular layout. So I pulled out some Lindy's Gang sprays, ones that I'd actually never used before. So when I say I was having a play, I was absolutely having a play. I've had these in my stash for months without actually even getting them ready to be used. So I had lots of fun pulling that all together and getting that done. So the colours were a little bit darker than what I thought envisaged in my mind, but one of the colours is the most amazing silver that you might have just seen in that close-up there. It's called Gag Me with a Spoon Grey, which is makes me laugh, but it's probably not the most appropriate. But anyway, and it's the most beautiful silver, and you don't see silver a lot, so I loved putting that in instead of using the standard gold that I often pull through on my pages. You'll see me there. What I'm doing there, I grabbed the carpet rug stencil. I keep calling it a stamp, but it's a stencil. And I have pulled through with some black gesso and modelling paste to give it some dimension on the page. I love how that turned out. Then I pulled out one of my favourite stamps, which is the Frond stamp, and just used the first few tips of that stamp with some distressed oxide and just randomly stamped across the page because I wanted to add just that pop of blue across the page. Now, I was still at this point thinking I was going to use that photo and those roses, but now that I was starting to, I guess it was almost because I was using that blank black, I was almost grunging it up a little bit. So it wasn't sitting with me that that's where I really wanted that photo to go. So I put the photo aside and just went to town with spraying some more inks across the entire page. There's that beautiful copper color on that right hand side. I also grabbed out some other ones as well. There's some yellow in there, and there's also some deeper orange in there as well, just to give it that little bit of layering through the colors. What I'm doing here is just watered down acrylic paint which is just some cheap stuff that I buy from, I think I got this one from Spotlight, and put some white splatters on the page. This actually doesn't turn out to be all that successful, and really it was my own fault. I dried it with a heat gun, and so it sort of really melted into the pages. I always find if I've used white acrylic paint with splatters, you get a much better look if you leave it to air dry. And I was a little bit too impatient for that. I really wanted to continue on. So for anyone that's seen my recent videos, you will have known that my heat gun had died, unfortunately, after me having spilt a whole heap of stuff on it. So I finally got out and bought that new one. It's super hot. I couldn't believe how hot it was. So I'm not sure I'm quite used to it yet, but we'll see. It did crimple up the page quite a bit, so I need to give it a bit of a go and see how I go there. Anyway, I digress. So I was really starting to head for the fact that this was probably going to be a journal page for myself. I was loving that coppery color that was coming through and that silver. So it started really resonating more with me than putting a photo on this page. So I distressed all the edges and just put some black archival ink around the edges. Now, what I didn't film, well, I did, but when I had so much editing to do for this particular one, I'll go through with you what I did up until this point. So this month there is tree branches that come through birch tree, I think it's called, yeah, birch tree collage paper. And I have fussy cut out those birch tree trunks and stuck those down across the page. One of the biggest things I've done here that I absolutely love is I've used the L stencil, which is the face stencil there that you can see on the left and the right hand side there. This was created or designed by one of the DT members as well and was released last month. And it's so beautiful, Claire. I love it. So I grabbed the stencil and used some Distress Oxide ink and used a blending tool and just pushed that ink through the stencil. That was on the left-hand side. The stencil was the right way up. And then I turned the stencil over, although seeing stencils as stencils, I guess it's not really a right or a wrong way, but I wanted to have the faces sort of almost like the hair was on the meeting, but they weren't because the trees were there. I guess that doesn't make sense, but it's where my brain went. And so and each one is a little bit faded more than the other. So the one on the left-hand side is sort of darker. The one on the right-hand bottom side is a little bit lighter, and the one on the top left right-hand side is a lot lighter. It's a really soft through there as well. So I love how that turned out. And I also wanted a little bit more color. You'll see here coming up in a moment, I add some other pink splatters as well to the background, but I also start adding in some blue. I really wanted to bring back some of that blue that I'd already put on there. Seeing I'd already had gone back over some of that stamping, I grabbed out some blue spray as well and just pulled that at the top and then added some water and had it spread down the page, down through the tree branches. So I really love how that turned out. What I'm using here is some phrases from Craft Journey page, and one of them, you won't know this about me, so I'll tell you something about myself. I love Mary Poppins, have always loved Mary Poppins. I mean, what else is not to love? And one of these sayings is from Mary Poppins. I mean, what else? It's one of the reasons why it made me decide that I was actually going to turn this into a journal page that was actually for me. What I also do is I couldn't work out whether I wanted to add any bigger element there, but I really wanted those faces to be part of what you could see on that page, and I didn't want to cover them up. So I pulled out a piece of pattern paper from my stash that had some butterflies and fussy cut out a couple of butterflies and put that through just across the page, diagonally across the page. So we're almost completed. I'm just gluing things down, and I popped up those phrases on some foam as well. The completed page is coming up with also some close-ups as well. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope I've inspired you in some way to get out and do some journaling or get out and just do some messy fun. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Bye.